Hi, everyone. Welcome to Iggy's Toy Parade and Soldier Review. My name is Iggy, and I will be your presenter today. You're looking at a very cool 1/6 scale Jeep made by Soldiers of the World. Now, if you're like me, you probably considered Soldiers of the World to be a pretty cheap action figure with shoddy uniforms and poor head sculpts. I didn't think very much of Soldiers of the World. However, when they came out with their vehicles, I was very highly impressed. I really liked what they have done. Now, who's Soldiers of the World? Well, they're a company that was started in 1987, and Soldiers of the World is one of the flagships of Formative International, which is a Chinese company, or I think more specifically, Hong Kong. And they actually have such a reputation that they've managed to secure a license to produce things for Disney. So they're not a fly by night rip-off company like you would assume when you saw Soldiers of the World pop up at the same time Ultimate Soldier was making headway. Now, this Jeep is of a Ford, and I want to be very careful what I call it because someone's going to call me to task if I get it wrong again. You can only make so many mistakes, and then people will get angry with you. It's Ford gave it the designation GPW, and Ford and Willys simultaneously were granted a contract to produce the Jeep. And some people mistakenly think the Jeep got its name from GP, General Purpose. That might be the case. However, it's not proven that that's where the name comes from. So, um, between Willys Overland and Ford, they produced about 640,000 Jeeps. Now, compare that to German firms who only produced 52,000 of the Volkswagen Kubelwagen. Um, if you ever wanted to know why Germany lost the war, well, there's a lot of reasons, but production is very important. And if one side is producing 640,000 vehicles and you only have 52,000, uh, that kind of disparity is virtually impossible to overcome. And that was true in other areas, like the Germans produced far less tanks than the Americans, and so on and so forth. Less trucks, less VWs, less everything, less aircraft. So Americans outproduced the Germans, and also the Americans outnumbered the Germans. So it was not like an equal contest. In areas of the war where the Germans achieved somewhat of parity with the Americans, such as Italy, uh, they put up a very stiff resistance. In fact, they still occupied the very north of Italy at the end of 1945. But I don't want to stray off into, things like who won the war and why. Um, that's kind of a swampy ground to be traveling on. And everyone's got a different opinion. And some people who are experts in the field will even differ with each other as to why. I'm not an expert. I'm maybe a layman at best, but I do love 1/6 scale military toys, of which this Jeep is one of them. Now, this particular model I'm going to show you now is of a military police vehicle. And this is different from the Jeep I drove in the Army in that it has a split windshield. It looks very similar. I mean, if you didn't know better, you would swear it's the same vehicle. I have a hard time distinguishing between World War II Jeeps and modern Jeeps. The Jeep was made for the Army up until around 1982. And then they began, I think, the Humvee to replace it. However, this Jeep was a valued item. The Russians really loved them. It was supplied to all the Allies, everyone in both theaters of war, in the Pacific and also in Europe. The Jeep was a common vehicle, 4x4, a quarter ton, multi-purpose utility vehicle. So it could tow, I think it said up to 600 to 700 pounds. And it had good cross-country capability due to it being a four-wheel drive vehicle. Later versions of the vehicle had independent suspension, meaning that each wheel had its own suspension, which improved its cross-country abilities. But how many of you guys know much about Soldiers of the World? I know virtually nothing of them. I tried looking them up online. I could find pictures of some of their soldiers and also their vehicles, but that was about it. You flip it over, and it says over here, let's see if I can find it again. Here it is. Formative International, made in China. And I looked up Formative and I found out a little bit of information, but not very much. I don't know if it's because it's a Chinese firm or it's just not a lot out there about their company. But you can see this vehicle is really nice. If you love G.I. Joe's, Ultimate Soldier, Dragon, BBI, all those figures, it behooves you to acquire one of these Jeeps. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be military police, because they made all sorts of models. They made a medic Jeep, command Jeep, military police Jeep. They made a Jeep with a canvas cover, which I haven't shown you yet. I didn't know I had 3 Jeeps. When I opened the box and found 2 Jeeps, I'm like, uh-oh, I have more than I thought, because I have one that's got a canvas cover. On the one with the canvas cover, you flip this up and it stretches out the canvas and you can connect it to the windshield. And it's really awesome looking when you have it on display, as is this. Your friends will be impressed by this, and you will too. So it's something worthy of your attention, and considering its source, I would give it an A. I think it's pretty cool. I like it, in other words. Now here's a illustration of a World War II Jeep. This is the GPW by Ford. The first ones that the Army accepted was by Willys Overland. And in 1941, they produced about 18,600. The Ford Motor Company later got into the design competition, which was originally between Willys and, oh dear, who was the other one? I can't remember the other one. It was by a company I'd never heard of. And then the Army said, well, how about if Willys Overland and Ford produced the Ford version of the Jeep? And that's this one here. And it gives the specs over here, which you can see. I think I read off some specs in my last video featuring the Vietnam era Jeep. I did notice that there is something missing in its detail. Oh, you know what? I lost it, because here is where it would, this here goes here. And there's an axe that goes here, as you can see in this illustration. See, there's an axe and a shovel. Oh, well, I'll find the axe eventually. I don't think this is right, because see how it's bent? So that can't be correct. There is a slight difference in the gear shift also. The actual Jeep shows 2 and 1, and this one just has 1 and 1. But you guys, as you can see with your own eyes, it's a pretty cool vehicle, and I think you'd really like to have it in your collection. Not necessarily in the military police, although I do have a number of MPs that I can display with this model. 40th anniversary G.I. Joe MPs. I have a number of those that when time comes, I'm going to display it with in this Jeep. So that's all I've got for you this time. I'm sorry that I'm speaking even slower than normal, because you know Iggy is slow. But I wanted to make sure I didn't goof up. And when I try and talk fast, I make mistakes. And I also stutter and stammer a lot when, well, I guess it's not really stuttering, but stammering. Or is that the same thing? I'm not sure. I mispronounce a lot of words too. So that's kind of a weird speech impediment, I guess. Not a serious one, but enough to be irritating to me anyway. But that's it. Let's get in this Jeep, guys. And, you know, this said it has a speed of 65 on the road and 50 cross country. So we can go to Roy Rogers Ranch. And what are we going to do? We're going to pig out at the chow wagon. So let's give Trigger a carrot and Bullet a dog biscuit. And we'll enjoy ourselves at the cookout. So this is Iggy saying thanks for joining the Iggy Army. For those of you who are subscribers, make sure you hit that bell. Otherwise, my videos disappear, because I got about 178 videos up now. I think when I hit 200 videos, I'm going to show you a repeat of the first video I ever did, only instead of showing the contents of the box, I'll set it up and show you a quasi diorama. I say quasi because it won't be, you know, with trees and stuff like that, terrain pieces. But I'll set up everything so you can get a better look at it. It was kind of difficult to make out the contents when it was just sitting in the box. Okay, guys, this is Iggy once again, and I'm going to thank you and say take care of yourselves, take care of your family, and get those things out that you loved as a kid. You'd be surprised how much pleasure you'll get with them still to this day. And you know what? You still can buy more stuff on eBay. So it's not too late to buy the things that you always wanted. For instance, I never had a Jeep when I was a kid. Now I've got, how many do I have now? 3? I said 3, didn't I? So I guess I'm overcompensating a little bit there. You know what girls say when a guy's overcompensating, so I'm not going to get into that. But it's probably true. Anyway, this is Iggy saying sayonara and auf Wiedersehen. And cheers, mate. Dos Badania. Adios.